Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Duhamel. I'm the president of Bloom Center for Municipal Education, and I'm actually really excited about being here with you today. And the reason why I'm excited about today's webinar is this is a subject that I believe creates massive value for municipal government. It's also one that I think is a necessary subject to talk about because of so many deep and difficult challenges that are occurring in today's municipal world. Um, I deal with challenges between municipal councils and administrations often. I do CAO appraisals. I've done code of ethics investigations. I've done mediation. I've done basically strategic plan workshops, relationship workshops, all kinds of different things that help support the admin and council relationship. And it's an area that I believe bears incredible fruit for municipalities if handled properly. It's also one that can really result in a municipality failing, for lack of a better word, if it's not handled properly. And so, lots of information about today in today's course that I think will be very helpful to you. Now, one of the things before we get going, I'm just going to mention I am delivering my in-person courses over the next number of months, and I'm going to be visiting Vancouver, Edmonton, Saskatoon, and I can't wait for this one, Niagara Falls. Never been there. And so I'm delivering my leadership courses, my operating budget courses, and my capital courses. Capital is only in Edmonton, but the other two are going to be at each of the locations. Please take a look on my website. I love to have you there. I'm a lot more fun in person than I am online. And so full CPA credits are available in these courses, and we'd love to see you there. All the dates and details are on my website. So enough about that. I don't usually spend a lot of time going over my bio, but I'm going to today. And the reason why is one of the things that I'd like to maybe state is that I feel that I'm in a good position humbly to be able to talk about this subject because I've spent 27 years in municipal government, not just as a consultant, because again, I've got a bit of an issue with consultants. I've never worked in municipal government giving the kind of advice that I'm going to give today, but I've actually worked in municipal government as a practitioner. I was a finance clerk, or basically budget officer. I was a finance manager for a number of years. I became a chief administrative officer in a small town, which was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, but also one of the more challenging ones from a professional experience. But again, a lot of direct discussions, a lot of direct learning from councils. And then I was a general manager of community protective services in a fairly large city of about 40 to 50,000 people in Spruce Grove. And so I like to think that I have a lot of actual practical and direct experience in the council CAO relationship. The other thing that I'm very proud of is I've worked with what I think are probably a couple of the best chief administrative officers that have ever been in municipal government, and I'm going to speak about them a little bit today. But I've also had the privilege of working with some amazing councils and councilors that have achieved so much in their political careers, and I really admire them. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about them and why they were so fantastic at developing the relationship between council and administration. And so I'm going to get into that information a bit today. So what are we going to talk about? Four key areas for today. I'm going to speak about just the foundations of a strong relationship. In this section, I'm going to talk about what are the key attributes of basically individuals that result in great relationships between council and administration. Why is the relationship so important? Maybe a few tips about kind of how we can start to develop that foundation for that relationship. Again, a fairly intensive section, but one that I think is very important for the setup of the rest of the webinar. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about roles. But in a deep dive about roles and why it's so important for a relationship, I'm going to talk about the chief administrative officer and administration as the trusted advisor and why the embracing that role is so key and critical to the relationship and the again success of a municipality. I'm also then going to talk about council as a strategic leader and what that means and what, again, why that's so important. And maybe most importantly, why the strong understanding of each role and the importance of making sure that there's a barrier between each role is absolutely key to the success for municipal government and certainly key for the success of the relationship. So we're going to talk about that. The next portion I'm going to talk about is basically official actions to build a relationship. What kinds of things can you do, and what kinds of things have I seen over the years that have really helped support great relationships between councils and administrations. Whether it be just basically generally how people interact or councils interact with the administrations, whether it's official activities like the sale performance appraisal, whether it's opportunities for workshops, whether it's protocols around communication and information sharing. I'm going to go over a lot of things that I think should be basically written down in some way, shape, or form in terms of here's the official things we do to foster and maintain the relationship between council and administration. And I think this is maybe one of the more important sections in today's course. And hopefully you'll get a few nuggets out of this section that will really help you as elected officials and or administrators to help support building up a relationship between yourselves and council. The last one I'm going to talk about is basically tips for long-term success and relationship maintenance. Again, relationships is always about work, maintaining, and checking to make sure the relationship is good. Relationships can be very strong. They can ebb away over time. Certain things can happen that can really cause issues in the relationship almost instantaneously with disagreements and conflict. I'm going to talk about what that looks like and maybe give you some tips in terms of how we can overcome those challenges as again municipal employees and as elected officials. So anyway, lots of content today. Lots of people online today. I just wanted to say this: if you've never been to a Bloom webinar today, welcome. Really happy to have you here. Been doing this for quite a long time. A couple of little caveats. I talk really fast. I have a challenge with public speaking that I've overcome over a long time, but I can talk a little bit quick. Part of that, the reason for that is I put a lot of content into my courses, and I want to give you as much value as I possibly can in an hour and a half. And so you're going to have a lot of content. So I'm going to go through the information fairly quickly. The second component is the slideshow, is basically what I consider an ebook. I put a lot of effort into creating great content within the slides. I don't just put a fishbowl on the screen and then talk for 20 minutes about that fishbowl, and then you go away with this printed piece of material and wonder what's that fishbowl about? Well, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, because you forget what the person was talking about. The PowerPoint is intended to be a bit of an ebook, so you can print it off, put it in your desk, and please do this. Within the next week, whip through the slides for even 15 minutes, 30 minutes if you want to really get something out of it. And if you want to take it to the next level, write some notes. That will result in this course being incredibly successful in terms of your retention and your learning and your personal development. If you're going to take professional development, you're going to spend an hour and a half with me, take the time later to make it really impactful. If you take that time to go through the slides and take some time to write some notes, it doesn't take more than a half hour, then this will stick with you forever. And I mean that sincerely. So anyway, moving on. Foundations for a strong relationship. One of the key things I use this slide often is in municipal government, 2 things lead to municipal success. The first one is positive culture. This is organizational culture between staff. This is basically great culture between council and the administration, and great cultural relationship to the way that we react with residents. Again, our shareholders, our customers. So positive culture is one of the absolute key components of great success for municipalities in terms of high performance. The second component is basically effective process. So whether it's the budget process, whether it's our council meeting processes, whether it's our strategic planning processes, whether it's and again, this is a process, our code of conduct and code of ethics around elected officials process. Whatever it might be, if we have great process and we have great culture, then municipalities typically will be very high performing and generate a lot of success. And today's webinar is going to talk a little bit about both of these aspects. And so again, a lot of good nuggets that will result, in my opinion, some high performance for municipalities. And before I move on, I'm just going to say this. I work with a lot of municipalities, and I worked with a lot of municipalities over the years, like literally hundreds, actually thousands of people taking my courses over an 8-year period. And the one thing that I typically see is when a municipality is highly successful, they always have good processes and a very positive culture, and that is founded in a great relationship between council and the administration. And so one of the things, if you're an elected official out there dealing with dysfunction or maybe frustration with the administration, the one thing that I think is important to have in your mind is that your success is significantly dependent on your relationship with the administration in a positive way. Great leaders are always, in a sense, positive and work with the people that they lead in relationship to their success. You will not be measured from a legacy perspective based on what you do. You're going to be measured on what the people that you lead do. That is going to be your legacy. And so when you really start to understand that, you start to understand that your actions, your attitudes, your how you manage or how you lead others or how you react to them is absolutely key to your legacy and the success that you'll achieve in a municipality over time. And so one of the key things that we have a challenge with elected officials on occasion, and even administrations, is we don't really know how to kind of get to that great leadership level where we are influencing what others do in a positive manner. And so hopefully some of the information I'll share with you today will help with that. Um, what is it all about in relationship to talking about today? It's all about relationships. I can't stress this enough. When it comes down to success, the CAO administration relationship is the cornerstone of municipal success. Councils have one employee, and you have to recognize a municipality is a very, very complex organization. We deal with fires, we deal with clearing roads, we deal with cutting grass, we deal with recreation opportunity, we deal with support and family and community services with people with possibly addictions or abuse issues. It is a highly complex organization that provides a ton of value. But the reality is when you're an elected official and you come on to a council, you can only influence essentially through one individual, and that's basically the administrator or the CAO. That is basically how the legislation works. And when you embrace this and you start to realize this, having a positive attitude to influence somebody in a positive manner is really how you achieve great things and how you can kind of see your vision come to fruition. So it has to be really well understood by elected officials that once you begin your journey as an elected official, you have to focus on success with an individual being the administrator or the CAO. And again, that will reflect in terms of how things get done with the rest of the administration. And so the relationship is the cornerstone of success. Strong relationships enable, again, strategic alignment, operational efficiency, and public trust. And so again, you as elected officials are here to create good for your community. You're here to create change for your community. You're here to have a vision for the community. You're here to essentially look at where you are today in your municipal situation, and you're there to make things better over time, whether it's a term, two terms, or maybe even over a 20-25 year period, which I've seen many times with municipalities where a council that decided to do something or set a policy many years ago has resulted in absolute success for a municipality decades later. And so that is the job. And you have to recognize that you're influencing through others. That is one of the keys to success in terms of understanding the relationship. And then when you're really concerned, this weak relationships can result in dysfunction, turnover, tension, and issues. And one of the things I think is really important to understand when we're thinking about that council-CAO relationship is one individual can ruin it for everybody. And that is one of the key concepts to understand in municipal government is that we have a council, but councilors all are individuals and have a right to their opinions, right to what they think is right from a visionary perspective, right to their goals, whatever it might be, and how they want to advocate for things within their community. But at the same time, they have to respect governance for things to be successful. They have to respect the democratic process. And if we don't, well, then that's when things start to get dysfunctional and we have challenge. When I work with municipalities, 9 times out of 10, there's rampant dysfunction in municipality is due to maybe one or two individuals that have dysfunctional approaches to the way that they react to the relationship with the administration. So you want to really understand that weak relationships can result in bad things. Okay, so important to consider. So understanding the roles and council versus administration. Council is responsible for governance, obviously setting strategic priorities, passing bylaws, ensuring accountability. Here's the key thing. As an elected official, this is, and I mean this sincerely, you're too important to be in what we call the weeds. And so if you're an elected official and you're worried about the way that the grader operator is grading the snow, or you're worried about the way that somebody's cutting the grass, or you're worried about how we're opening the doors in the morning at the rec facility, your mind's on the wrong things because that's not where you make a great impact in your communities. And when you look at a community or a municipality over time, and you look at communities today that have significant economic development growth in their communities, significant recreation growth in their communities. They're very safe communities. They're communities that have great organizational or social culture within the community. A lot of positivity. It's because of councils that have set the tone and planted seeds possibly many years ago. And so when you really embrace your role from a strategic perspective and a leadership perspective, you start to kind of push away from basically the day-to-day work, the day-to-day issues that we have in a municipality. That is the key to success, in my opinion, from a councillor role. But again, one of the reasons why, in my opinion, we often result in dysfunction and a lack of focus on strategic goals is that some elected officials get on to a council and they don't have maybe the background that allows them to think strategically or act strategically or realize the importance. And so when they start to digress into the things that are easy and the things that are simple to see. I don't like the way that you cut the grass today. I don't like the way that the potholes are graded. I don't like the way that some of our customer services may be acting in the front of the rec facility. Wherever it may be, that's the small stuff, but it's the easiest stuff to criticize. But it's not the things that really result in positivity. Now, that said, one thing I'm going to cross the line here is when it comes down to the roles, and me as a former administrator, both as a sales and general manager, I know this goes against conventional thinking, but that doesn't mean that some counselors may not have the ability or should not have the ability to maybe criticize some of the things that we're doing today from a service perspective. But it's about process and how it's done. I'm going to talk about that later today. We have to open up the door for process to allow elected officials to look at the small things if they notice things that they don't like. And that allows us to either improve as an administration and or explain why we do things the way that we do. I think that's absolutely critical to building up the relationship. It's not to just totally shut down council in relationship to their want in terms of being able to maybe criticize or question things that we do during the day, but simply to make sure that we have a process that allows for a systematic way to overcome those challenges. And so absolutely key to the role. Administration is led by the CAO and implements council's direction through daily operations. And one of the key nuggets here is that CAOs, many are really good at this, but some aren't good at communicating with council about the way that they're implementing their direction or their thoughts or their ideas. And here's a bit of a nugget. Every CAO should once a month, at least once a month, take the time to shut the door, write down, and maybe take a half a day with all kinds of dictation software abilities today, using chat, whatever it might be, maybe even having a staff member that helps you write. There should always be some type of a message to council once a month that says, here's the things that we did this month that are aligned with your strategic goals and your strategic plan. Here's the things that we did to make an effort to improve the things that you're concerned with. By writing maybe 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, 2-page email, whatever it might be, just once a month, gives council the confidence that you're actually doing things in alignment with what they believe is important, their priorities, their direction, their strategies, and everything else. And here's the thing. As a CAO, your job is to make council successful. And one of the key things councils have challenges with is when the public criticize them. We as CAOs recognize one thing, and I've helped a lot of CAOs get through this challenge. We sometimes get criticized by the councils, and sometimes it's actually quite strong in terms of that criticism, and we take it home, and it's very hard. But the reality is we have to recognize as administrators that councils take criticism from the public, and sometimes that criticism is very hard. And so they often will synthesize the criticism that they're taking from the public and vent it on the administration. And so once we recognize how that works, we start to realize that we have to set our councils up for success by explaining why we're doing the things that we do, how we're reacting to the strategic goals or the vision that they have. Here's the good things that we're doing during the month, and making sure that we communicate that again at least once a month. That gives council some information, and for lack of a better word, some ammo to basically react to the public that are maybe criticizing them. And so again, it's a relationship. We're there to set each other up for success. So consider that. Understanding that these roles are distinct is really important. It helps avoid confusion. And here's the thing, go over this often. I mean, we often start off relationships between councils and administrations with an orientation, maybe a strategic planning session, and that's the one and only time that we do that during the whole council term. I'm a big believer that you should have a relationship workshop between the administration and council at least maybe once every 6 months. And there should be a strategic planning session at least once a year where we can talk about things, be open about challenges, and make sure that we're congruent with what we're trying to achieve together with as a council and administration. So moving on. This slide is just a little bit more about the different roles, a little bit more detail. And the reason I put the slide in here is the picture at the bottom. People often ask me, why do you put a picture of a conductor in the roles and responsibility section for council versus administration? And it's simple like this. Here is a mental thought that I think elected officials and administrators should have, is when you're thinking about the roles, it basically comes down to this. Council is the conductor and administration is the band. And basically, as an elected official, you need to be able to wave the wand and give us the direction about where you want us to go. What are our priorities? What are our strategic goals? What are the visions that you have for the community? And what is it you want to achieve over your term so that when you walk away, you feel you have a strong legacy in terms of positive change for your community. But you don't need to know how to play the tuba. You don't need to know how to play the drums. You don't need to know how to play the trumpet. Basically, you need to be able to guide us in terms of where the music goes. The administration, on the other hand, has to be experts at playing the instruments and making sure that council is confident that we're good at playing the instruments. And as long as we can kind of have that vision kind of in terms of an example shown, I think we're in a good spot. But again, a council is too important to basically be in the weeds. Here's the funny thing. Anybody have ever heard, and I'm sure you've heard of Hans Zimmer. What I found fascinating about Hans Zimmer, I took my son to go listen to the music of the Hans Zimmer at the Winsphere here earlier this year. And one of the things that was really surprising to me when I read his biography is that he was never actually schooled or learned about playing any instruments. He just said, I had the music in my mind, but I don't know how to play any instruments. I've never actually been formally trained on any instrument. And I found that shocking that somebody could compose so much amazing music without understanding how to play the instruments. It's very similar to an elected official. They have amazing visions for our communities. If you really look at the communities that we have here in Canada, it's like a virtual playground or kingdom to live in municipalities in today's world. We have amazing recreation facilities. We can always feel safe because we have fire and ambulance and police that support us. I can take my dog for a walk in the beautiful communities that I live in where the trails are well maintained and the grass and the flowers are all taken care of. I can, for me, a big thing was my kid was a hockey kid, and I can go to watch my kid play in cold hockey rinks across all of Alberta at any time I wanted. And I have those memories. Again, we live in virtual playgrounds, and it was because of visions of elected officials from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and even 40 years ago that have resulted in the communities that we have today. So that vision and having that music in your mind is basically the key to success for municipal government. But we have to learn how the relationship works to make sure that that vision turns into action, turns into actual tangible results. So that is the key, in my opinion, understanding the rules. So mutual respect and trust. Now, here's the key thing. Key to great leadership is having municipal great respect and trust. So respect is the cornerstone of the relationship. Trust grows from consistent communication, honoring, lagging a little bit again, honoring commitments, treating each other with professionalism. This is the key. If you are treated well as an employee, and everybody, even if you're an elected official, you've probably all been employees at some point in your time. What is it that you admire and what motivates you as an employee when you're thinking of great leaders? Usually somebody who gives you good direction, who's somebody who shows care for you, who's somebody who will give you constructive criticism in a positive way without being hurtful. Somebody that sets you up for success by making sure that you have the tools that you need to be successful, whether it be financial tools, training tools, whatever it might be. That is what motivates me as an employee. And I've worked with leaders like that. The CAO of Strathcona County, Bill Sutherland, was the most amazing leader I've ever worked with. When he started, the municipality had 0% tax increases for over 5 years, was a community that was targeted as an amalgamation community by the city of Edmonton because it was kind of failing at the time. Oldest bus fleet in Western Canada, I think. Roads were falling apart. There was no economic development. And he worked with council to synthesize their vision to and then he worked with the administration to give us the tools to succeed. And end result, 20 years later, Strathcona County is one of the most wealthy communities in all of North America and is a very vibrant community. But it came down to great communication between council and the administration. And the one thing that I noticed is he was very good at respect with council all the time, all the time. He had us go into a meeting. It was called our annual general meeting, and this was very early in my career when I really didn't understand anything about municipal government. It was like very complicated to me many years ago. And I remember going into this. They called it the AGM. There's maybe 500-600 staff in this meeting room, and the Bill came up to the front of the stage and he said, I want to talk to you a little bit about our vision for the community. And I would like you to know that the leaders of our community are here today. And I'm going to talk to you about their vision. And I'd like our leaders of the community to stand up and say hello. And basically 9 people stood up at the front of the audience, turned around and waved at all of us as staff. And that was council. And what Bill did there is one of the things I really took to heart later and I understood better as I became a little bit more sophisticated in my understanding of municipal government is he was building up municipal respect for us of council. He was having council showing respect for us by coming to our meeting. And then he went over the strategic plans and talked about council's vision for understand that we had basically our marching orders of what council wanted to achieve. Again, 25 years later, we achieved a lot of what Bill talked about that day from a strategic planning session. But again, the most important part of that day, in my opinion, was he was setting us up for success in terms of the relationship with council, that it was a positive relationship, it was a respectful relationship. And he made it clear that we had to know as staff, those were the leaders. He wasn't necessarily the leader, they were our leaders, and he was synthesizing their leadership through the strategic plan and the actions he was about to take. And so I thought that was really important. Again, treating each other professionally, having respect and trust with each other, erodes, and governance will suffer if you do not have this. And so when we get negative questions from council about maybe the things that we're doing, if we get criticism from council about the way that we're doing things, from specific councilors, then I can guarantee the staff walked away not feeling very good. And here's one thing for the elected officials online: what you don't know is that if you look badly at your administration and you find frustrated with them, I can guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, because I've worked with a lot of administrations I've been with myself, is that when we walk into the council chambers and we're about to present something, we actually have a lot of respect for you as council. We're actually also usually pretty nervous about presenting, and we want to please you. That is the whole point of what we're trying to achieve as subordinates, whether it's a work subordinate, a family subordinate, like your kids, whatever it might be. We always want to please the leaders. And so when you start to recognize that the staff are there to try to help support you and they want to get your recognition and they want to please you, then you start to recognize that, hey, this is a positive relationship, and me as a leader should act appropriately with great respect and great trust with the staff. Something to consider. So a shared commitment to community outcomes. And so one of the things that's really important when we're starting to build on the relationship is having a shared commitment to community outcomes. And this is really important. So council sets the direction. Council sets us up for success with a great vision. Council sets us up with objectives and everything else. But if you've got a good facilitator for strategic plans, and I happen to be one of them, it's really key that you set an expectation as council is that there's not just a strategic plan with goals and objectives and kind of high level vision, that there's also an administrative action plan. And what that will do is if administration is expected to come back to council with basically an action plan that's tied to the strategic plan, well then all of a sudden administration and council becomes aligned in terms of that shared commitment to community outcomes. What frustrates council more than anything is when they develop a strategic plan or they have a vision or they give direction or they say what our priorities are, and basically all of that direction goes into thin air, goes into clouds. You're not doing any of the things that we've asked you to do. We're not seeing any actual action occurring according to what we want from a visionary perspective. That's when councils get very frustrated, and that's when they say, okay, fine, if we're not going to focus on our strategies and things that we think are important, well then I'm going to start maybe focusing on the way that you clear snow. Or I'm going to focus on why did this budget item go up by $150? If all you ever do as administration is give council weeds, then that's what they're going to focus on. So we as administrations have to start thinking about how am I going to enable council strategic plan by getting them to a good place? How am I going to embrace the things that they've identified their strategic plan through actions and actual rubber hitting the road? And that might be, they want to see better financial sustainability. Well, I'm going to maybe put in a project to develop a long-term tax strategy. They want to see a safer community. I'm going to maybe look at and work with my fire department and maybe my police department on how can we come up with some programs that make our community a bit safer. We want to see better economic development. How am I going to come back to council with the possibility of maybe hiring a new economic development officer or having doing some work that puts us on the map in relation to attracting commercial development? What are the actions I'm going to take to basically commit to what council wants ultimately? And so once you start kind of recognizing as an administrator, I have to take action on what council is asking for, then I believe the relationship starts to really take off from a positive perspective. Council starts to look at you as an administrator, somebody who listens to them, who takes action on their wants, who is somebody who gets things done. That is ultimately what councils want in an administrator. So you have to learn to take action on what they want from a community outcome perspective. And again, from a simplistic perspective, take the strategic plan and create an action plan tied to it. And again, that'll take you a long way in a relationship to helping build up the relationship. Clarity of authority and expectations. Again, clearly defined job descriptions, performance indicators, reporting structures. These things are vital. Here's the thing. Every CAO should have a performance or have a job description that is very clear. Council should have basically kind of a role statement that is very clear. Council and councilor statements in terms of roles, responsibilities, and this should be looked at least once a year together. So there should be again a performance appraisal, and a kind of an idea about what is a CAO authorized to do and what are they not authorized to do. And so daily operations, procurement, purchasing, these types of things. I'm working with the municipality right now. Again, I never say names, so I can kind of state this. And one of the challenges that we're having right now is council is used to being involved in the procurement process from a decision-making perspective. And one of the things me and my team have talked about from a policy perspective is that you're here to set the high-level direction from a procurement policy perspective, but when it comes down to the RFP, the tendering, the decisions, that's not really a council role. And why? Because if council gets involved in choosing the vendor, then it opens us up to the possibilities of vendors wanting to try to be political, to try to influence. It opens the procurement process up to, for lack of a better way of putting it, quasi-corruption. And not saying that any municipalities are corrupt, our client certainly is, but at the same time, it just opens things up to bad behaviors. And so we want to make sure that we understand what is the administration's role, what is the council's role, and we want to make sure that we stay in our lanes and rationalize why we have to stay in those lanes. So something that's very important, okay? Power of CAO council communication, absolutely key. Communication is very important. So again, regular communication avoids misunderstandings and builds trust. When I was a young CAO, very early in my career, I am the rocket scientist who actually recommended to council that they should shut down the hockey rink because it was the most expensive thing that we actually had, and they were looking for a cost saving. And I can still remember as a rookie CAO the reaction of council in that meeting, and that there were some gasps for the two or three people that actually came to the council meetings. There were some gasps in the audience, and I can still remember 2 or 3 days later the mayor asking me to take a walk around the lake. There's no lake in the town, so anyway, a bit of a walk. And so on that walk, the mayor said, "Tim, we really appreciate you. We're looking forward to working with you for a long time. We think you have a lot of potential." But recommending that was one of the dumbest things that we've ever heard of and seen, and council was unhappy. Now, what I really appreciated about that walk is that the mayor had talked with council. He had gotten all the information from them. He had gotten and heard for their frustrations, probably from individuals. Some were probably more frustrated than others. And he took the time to take the walk with me and very constructively tell me what he thought was good and not good. And I learned to really appreciate that walk because, again, it was a very advanced form of communication that gave me a heads up in a positive and constructive way about where I maybe stepped in it and not very well, rather than it being kind of left to the wayside, maybe built up over time, maybe emails coming in or social media comments being made. He gave me a chance to recognize my fault, recognize the dumb thing I did, and overcome the issue. The next council meeting, I came back with another report, and I admitted in council, you know what, I recognize now that probably wasn't a very wise administrative recommendation. I apologize for it, and here's another recommendation that we have for budget savings. And again, so it may help me save face. I went for many walks around the lake with that mayor over the years that I worked there. I always appreciated that with him, is that he would take the time to listen to what council had to say and took the time to communicate with me. So that's one example of great communication between a council administration. One of the things that I could just want to make a point before I move on from this is that the mayor made sure that he always listened to all of council. He never just came to me by himself without basically saying to council, I'm going to have a meeting with the CAO, I'm going to take it for a walk. What do you guys want me to talk about? What that really helped with is the recognition of that there's councilors and there's council. And at that time, the mayor was putting on his council hat that I am representing council. I'm not the boss of council. I only get one vote, but I am representing their thoughts and their ideas, and I'm communicating it well to our one employee. And that worked out really well. And so I've seen that type of relationship many times in municipalities since that experience. And I have found that mayors that are great at working with councils and building the trust up with council to be the spokesperson to talk to the CAO, it works really well. When we have multiple voices coming at us from multiple elected officials, it basically becomes noise and becomes a bit dangerous because we don't know that the messages that are coming to us are basically the opinions of council on the whole, which is absolutely key for an administrator. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So again, formal mechanisms are important. Council briefings, informal ones like weekly check-ins. Again, that email to council once a month I think is important. Proactive communication is always better than a reactive communication. So if you're going to have a great relationship with councilors, administrators, do not avoid the communication and being proactive. You have to do that if you're an administrator. And always, here's the thing, and this is a hard one for some administrators: look for constructive criticism, not just hearing the good things that you're doing, because you want to hear about what you're doing wrong so you can correct things quickly so it doesn't fester and turn into a dysfunctional situation. So communicate, absolutely important. One thing that I put down here that I'm a big believer in is relationship retreats. Now, a relationship retreat might just be a half a day in the council chambers. It might be a weekend retreat at the community hall. It might be going off-site away from the community. But I believe that there should be at least one relationship retreat every year between the administration, the CAO, and council. And that means going away, and it's basically, it can be facilitated or not. I would recommend it being facilitated. But essentially what we're trying to do is get out, what are our issues? What are the problems we're facing? What are your frustrations with me? What are the things that I'm doing right? What are the things I'm doing wrong? It's not a performance appraisal. It's time for council to basically just unleash and vent anything that they believe is good or bad in a controlled manner. And by doing that, it allows the CAO to hear what's wrong, but it also allows, in a controlled atmosphere, for elected officials to voice their concerns or their issues, but also for the CAO to hear, is that the feeling of the council on the whole? And so there's a bit of debate and discussion in those workshops that may result in maybe a councillor being kind of pushed down. Well, the rest of us don't agree with your thoughts on this, and we have to respect democracy. And so again, relationship workshops to me is one of the key critical tools that you should put in your toolbox in terms of the relationship. Getting together and being willing to kind of have an unvarnished conversation is absolutely key to success, in my opinion, in terms of good relationships, even in your personal lives as well. So something to consider. Now, set the expectations early. So initial orientations and early conversations about working styles, communication preferences, conflict resolution methods are all very important. And so I've talked a lot about certain ways of communicating today. And I think they should be documented and set out in orientation in terms of here's our expectations of how we're going to communicate together over time. Now, one of the things that's important to me, really important here, is is that you want to be consistent in approach, and so that might mean here's how we have the relationship workshops. The CAO will send them a communicative, basically log on what we've done or achieved over the last month, once a month. Council will vent all of their issues and concerns and issues together as a team to the mayor, and then the mayor will talk with the sale about maybe any issues or problems that we have over time. Maybe there'll be one-on-ones that are appropriate with all of council, but it's going to be structured and visible to the rest of council so that all of council knows that we're having one-on-ones. The sale was maybe having one-on-ones with each councilor at some point during the year. You want to make sure that all these things are well established and they're documented and they become accepted, because again, if it's not accepted, then it's considered inappropriate maybe by some counselors, and communication can become a negative thing. So basically, make sure you set things up early, properly. Don't wait for conflict. Build up alignment early. So again, what are your expectations of me as your CEO? What is your expectations of my team? It's okay. I don't want you in the weeds telling us how to run the grader or how to cut the grass, but doesn't mean that you're not allowed to give me your opinion on things that we do. I'm your CEO. If we have service issues, I want to make sure that those things are fixed, and so we want to set the tone for what that looks like very early in the relationship. And so again, don't wait for conflict. Overcome those things by again having open communication and some systematic ways of communicating, which I'm going to show you a little bit later. Again, and a sale performance appraisal, which I'll talk about again later, is a must do. You must have a sale performance appraisal. Here's the thing. We all lead in some way, shape, or form in our lives. If you're a parent, you've been a leader. And one of the key things I often say, and again, I heard this, and this is what I think Simon Swanek had said this, I love this quote, is when your kids do something wrong, what do we do? What we typically do is we get rid of them. We sell them. We take them out to the forest and we say, run away, and be free. I'll get inside. That's not what we do. We maybe correct them, but then we always, with children, because we love them, we try to find ways of giving them advice, giving them the tools, giving them an understanding of the correct way of doing things so that they can succeed over time. And that is not all that different in the way that you should be from a leadership perspective with staff. And remember, your SEO is your staff. And so when you're looking at leading, the SEO performance appraisal is not something to criticize. It's something to constructively give feedback on and then put tools in place so the person can become better. Christine Jackson was my mentor and the first person who gave me what I would call a high quality performance appraisal. She was the director of finance at Strathcona County. Long story short, she got the job over me. I was really upset for a long time until about a year happened and I realized she was better than me. And I could learn so much from her. And some of those things that she taught me, I still use today. And the one thing that she taught me was how to do a really good performance appraisal. And I was shocked when she came with a performance appraisal. She was really noticing things. She noticed that I was scared of public speaking. I had a bit of a stutter, so I had to work on those types of things. I was maybe a bit disorganized. I became too friendly with my staff rather than being friendly, or I became friends with my staff rather than just being friendly and coaching them properly. But what really hit me is then she had a bunch of information in here about here's the things you can do to improve. So you could take courses, you could work on, read these books, you could take, I will mentor you, all those things. So she gave me basically a list of the things that I needed to do to get better. And then unbelievably over the next year, she then gave me the most important thing a leader can give you is she gave me her time. So she actually would sit with me in my office and talk about the things that I did right, or give me encouragement, or talk to me about how I could do things better. That is the crux of great leadership. And when you're a council and you want to see success, your legacy is completely dependent on the success of the chief administrative officer and the administration. And so it is in your best interest to set up great performance appraisals, set up great goals, and most importantly, give them the tools to succeed, whether it be motivation, whether it be encouragement, whether it be training, whether it be financial resources, whatever it might be, you need them to succeed. That is the key to great leadership and building up the relationship. Get that relationship set early in terms of what expectations are, and then lead. That is the key. And leadership means supporting. Supporting. You're not in charge of somebody when you're a leader. You're in the charge of the care of somebody when you're a leader. So very important to consider when you're a council. And I know it's hard when there's 7 people leading one person, or 5 people leading a person, or 9 people. It gets a bit confusing, but I'll talk to you and give you some tips on that in a few moments. So that's it. Now, moving on. Now, the trusted advisor versus the strategic leader. Now we need to think about the different roles. Again, this is a bit of a deeper dive. And so the CAO offers objective advice, grounded in evidence, professional knowledge, and municipal best practices. And so we are there. Again, ultimately, when you wake up in the morning as a CAO, you have to have one thought in your mind. I am here to do one thing, and that's to make council successful. If council is successful, then our municipality is successful. I'm doing things to help achieve their vision. I'm helping to do things that get our services aligned with what they think service level should be. I'm doing things to help them from a public engagement perspective. I am helping my council, thus I'm helping our organization. And so you must do that, and not in a political way. And so basically you have to do your homework on evidence, you have to do your homework on best practices around services, you have to do your homework on strategic goals, maybe how do we develop, how do we attract new residents, how do we improve our roads, whatever it might be. That is the job. The council role is basically the role depends on a high level of trust and commitment in keeping council well informed. And so one of the things that's really important is you want to do your homework. Council over time wants to know that they have somebody, a trusted advisor, who is giving them the right information. They've done the homework in terms of like getting a business case developed. They're doing the homework in terms of like what are other municipalities doing well. They're doing the homework in terms of like talking to the right consultants and getting good advice. So when council is ready to make decisions, they know that they're making decisions based on grounded evidence, good justifications, well thought out recommendations, whatever it might be. They can trust the person that's bringing the information towards them. Too many times I've seen relationships between councils and CAOs go really bad because the CAOs don't do their due diligence on getting council the right information for making decisions. That is our job, and we have to take it seriously. We have to make sure we have an absolute goal that's burning in us at all times to make council successful. That is our job. So that is key. We must really take into account the term of trusted advisor. Council's role is being strategic. And so again, the CAO role is being that trusted advisor. Council's role is being that strategic leader. And so again, setting those goals, those vision, that strategic and long-term direction. This can be frustrating for some councils because it feels nebulous. But if you have a good facilitator that can take your strategic goals and then talk to the administration about turning those goals into concrete actions and then ultimately tangible outcomes, then council feels a lot better. They're actually feeling kind of proud of what we set direction, and we're seeing it actually take hold. We're seeing a safer community. We're seeing maybe new business coming to our community. We're seeing more community pride because people are, our events are better, or maybe our branding has changed, whatever it might be. We're starting to see things happen. And so councils come in, and this is a really important concept to understand. Councils come in as what we call disruptors. Now, when we think of disruption, we always go to disruption means negativity, but it's not in the council realm, and especially in the municipal realm, because disruption means change. When I was a kid, I used to play hockey, and for me, until I was about 10 years old, hockey was on outdoor ice in minus 25-degree weather all the time. The skate park was the stairs at the school, and the spray park was when the fire department would come and open up the fire hydrant once a year. It would spray, and we all go right through it. Yeah, I'm kind of old. When we look at today, there's indoor ice is pretty ample in all most municipalities across Canada. We have all these beautiful spray parks. I have one behind my house. I hear kids laughing every day in the spray park behind my home because again, it's a great place to spend the summer. Skate parks. A lot of municipalities have skate parks. My kid was a skater kid when he was young, and so I spent a lot of time at skate parks. Amazing recreation facilities. We have evolved our municipalities into virtual playgrounds, and that's because of the great vision of elected officials over time. that we have evolved over time. And so as long as we understand the strategic role and we take action on those things, then we really have kind of hit things home well. Micromanaging staff doesn't work. So again, this is where, and this is the one that really gets me. I was just talking to an administrator yesterday about this, and it makes them feel really small, is when we have councils that are grammar police. With all the strategic goals and all the great things that administration has done over a week, and trust me, your admin has done a lot of amazing work over the week, whether it be fixing potholes or cutting grass, whatever it might be. They've done a lot of work to come to a council meeting and then hear they versus there, or you didn't cross this T, or you didn't cross the I, or you got a grammar issue, or really nitpicky things in relationship to the agenda package. It really makes the administration feel really small, and so that's an example. I mean, and I think a really good example of where elected officials don't recognize that their actions can really hurt the administration in a negative way. That doesn't mean that maybe you don't mention that the agenda package, because agenda packages, we want them to be right. It's hard to put together a 200 to 300 page agenda package without some kind of mistake being in it. But in the end, we want to be as correct as possible. But it's about, where do you give that direction? Do you do it in a council meeting and wait until you're in front of the public and embarrass the administrator? Or do you send them a note personally through an email, or just talk to them about, yeah, I noticed something in the agenda package, just so you know, the page numbers are wrong, or this was spelled, there's a spelling mistake or something like that. The administrator will appreciate it. And to me, that is, again, leadership, and it's showing care. And so micromanaging is not good, but doesn't mean that you cannot provide advice or your right thoughts on things. It's about approach. It really is. And so understanding that you're there to be strategic. You're far too important to be in the weeds. But at the same time, approach on certain things that you think are important can make all the difference in the world. And so again, strategic leadership means making policy decisions, letting the CAO handle the execution of things. Okay, really key thing to understand. Supporting council on the whole. Again, one of the key things as a CAO, you must understand, if you want to make sure the relationship is working, you cannot pick sides. You cannot have favorites. Now, that said, we're all human beings. So naturally, we're going to like some people more than others. But when it comes to the municipal government, it is a killer if you play favorites as a CAO with certain elected officials. It can really cause issues, and it's not fair to the elected officials. And so you must be impartial. You must look and work for the council on the whole, not as individuals. And you have to make sure that you discipline yourself in that way, or else you will eventually begin to create basically, issues with the councilor. Some councilors aren't going to like the way that you do things, because again, they'll feel that you're playing favorites and you're not maybe doing things impartially. So you must maintain an impartial, non-political role as an administrator. Do not have political opinions. If you have political opinions, leave them for at home. But your job is not political. Your job is to provide advice, facts, information, and set council up for success with decisions. And so you must be very disciplined in being non-political and being very impartial. I've seen many CAOs in the end wonder why councils either don't like them, or certain councilors are very negative towards them, or eventually why they even get fired. And 9 times out of 10, it's because of these two things. I've shown favoritism, and I've actually got a political opinion that I shouldn't have, and I'm maybe giving my advice or giving information that's got a slant on it because I want council to make a decision a certain way. That is basically a killer when it comes down to the council administration relationship. It is not your job to have opinions, right? Doesn't mean that we don't make strong recommendations, but it means that we have to stay out of the political realm. Okay, so council should avoid also directing staff through informal channels or circumventing the CAO. Now, this is a really important one. Council should not be speaking directly to staff and giving direction. That is the CAO's job, but the CAO has to be open to listening to council and listening to possibilities of constructive criticism, direction, those type of things. Now, this has to be controlled and we have to be very careful about it, because this can get out of hand. But there's nothing wrong with the councilor calling and saying, you know what, I saw garbage laying on the street and so it can maybe have somebody look into it, or we've got an issue with weeds in this area, whatever it might be. Those things are not necessarily bad, but there should be a process for it. But if it gets to where a counselor is highly critical of staff and constantly trying to maybe give advice in terms of how to deliver a service, that's a big no-no. And again, always, as a CAO, do yourself a favor. If you get an email from a counselor, criticizing something or asking for something or asking for an action, always respond and CC council on the whole. And once counselors know that I'm not going to be able to say things directly to an administrator without all of council knowing it, then they become more disciplined in their approach, right? Again, it's all about protocol and approach. Never react to one. You react always to council on the whole in terms of your responses. Something to consider. Sales often counter political pressure. Again, we live in a political world, so we get political pressure, but we want to make sure that we don't succumb to that political pressure. All of our policies and protocols must guide how councils communicate with staff. And again, we must navigate through these pressures with professionalism and strength. And so we cannot take sides. We cannot, basically, again, have opinions. We got to be very careful that we are being non-political in our approach. And again, you're human beings. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have an opinion, but you have to have the discipline and political acumen to make sure that you do not voice those opinions or take action on those opinions that could be considered influential in terms of having council kind of go one way or the next. Again, councils will notice this and it's very inappropriate. And so be careful, recognize that there's political pressure, take some training and understand what political acumen means, make sure that you remain impartial, make sure that you tell your staff we have to remain impartial, and make sure that you tell your staff you have to always remain respectful of political opinions on council and recognize that there's going to be splits on occasion. Some of the greatest things I've seen happen in municipal government are because have happened during the democratic process where there's basically political polarizations on councils and a lot of debate has occurred. But ultimately, once the decision's made and councils move forward, great things have happened because of great debate and political challenge. And we as administration, that's not our role. So again, it's up to council. Moving on. Now, when we're thinking about these things, consider lagging a bit again. Just a moment. Sorry, there we go. Oh, always got to be careful. I don't want this shutting down. Governance training and role understanding. And so if you're going to get good at this, take some time, whether it be going through the slides here, Googling online roles, responsibilities, seeking out facilitators or consultants. Make sure that you have a strong understanding of governance and your roles and understanding. I've given you a lot of information on that today. So again, this is important because it provides you with clarity in terms of what you should be doing, what's expected. And again, it helps you make better decisions. Helps resolve conflict between council themselves and the administrations. Helps strengthen democracy. And again, all of these things are absolutely key in supporting the CAO and council relationship. By understanding the roles, we stay in our lanes and we cause less dysfunction because we're not necessarily maybe criticizing or having opinions on things that we shouldn't. And so take the time to take some training, understand that role, and do everything you can to stay in that lane. Now, here's the thing. If you're an elected official, and this leads to frustration because you want to see better snow clearing. Maybe you want to see better services in relationship to the way that we fill the potholes, or maybe you want to see the recreation facility treated differently. You can do that, but through policy and service level adjustments. And so again, that's still a strategic role. Doesn't mean that you can't wade yourself into what we call the weeds at a strategic level. It just means that you need to do it appropriately and do it through policy and through bylaw and through strategic planning sessions or whatever it might be. So again, understanding your role and how to utilize that role in a constructive manner to get what you want and how to advocate is absolutely key to the council role. So take the time to learn it. It'll make a big difference. Okay, reinforcing the boundaries with professionalism. So again, remember, firm boundaries don't mean inflexibility. And again, having a professional approach, knowing the roles clearly, and understanding what's appropriate and inappropriate is absolutely key. And so when we talk about personal boundaries, you want to make sure that you recognize that there has to be some flexibility. Shutting council down or shutting counselors down, saying, well, you're not allowed to speak to staff ever, we don't want to hear it, that kind of thing, it just doesn't work. It frustrates counselors. And so recognizing that there might be times as a CAO, if you have great political acumen, that I will open my door up to maybe one-on-ones, maybe once every 2 months. But every elected official has an option for those one-on-ones. They're going to be structured. They're going to be scheduled. Every elected official knows that they're going on, so they see the one-on-ones. I might have one-on-ones with individual elected officials maybe once every quarter. And this will be a time for them to vent, for them to ask me questions, for them to, tell me what they like or maybe what they don't like, but they can't provide me the necessary direction that we'll act on if it's big things. And if they do, then I have to have the political acumen to make sure that I summarize all of the information for the one-on-ones and I make sure it's communicated to council on the whole. That is the key. The one-on-ones, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with having conversations with the counselors. Nothing wrong with them having concern or venting concerns or issues. But it's how you respond and making sure that all of council knows if there's something that's come up that you feel is warranted and maybe requires action. All the council needs to be aware, and all the council have to make those decisions. And so, really think about the boundaries and think about your opportunities for success. The ones where I've seen council relationships and CAO relationships really go south is when CAOs are extremely rigid. You cannot talk to me about services. You cannot talk to me about staff. You cannot talk to me about anything that goes out of basically council chambers. I'm not willing to have a conversation with you without all the council there. That frustrates elected officials. You have to have a bit of what I call relationship maturity, political acumen, and understand protocols and procedures well. And as long as you have the rest of council's trust, everybody will know that you're not doing things offside. You're not taking direction. You're not acting on things that one councilor tells you to do. You're doing things in a very professional manner, but at the same time, you're opening up opportunity for discussion and request and comment. So that to me is really key. Firm boundaries, but doesn't mean that you can't be flexible and think about ways that is productive in terms of the relationship. Okay. Now, official actions to build a relationship. I know getting through a lot of stuff here, I'm going pretty quickly, but again, I want to give you as much value as I possibly can. So hopefully you're enjoying the information. So official actions to build a relationship. So here's the thing: too often, councils and administrations will work together, and the counselors and again, I can never blame the counselors for this because they get elected, they come into the municipal realm, and it's highly complicated. Oh, so much information to learn in that first 6 months: legislation, bylaw, rules, Robert's rules, how to run a council. I mean, it's information overflow. So I put a lot of the responsibility here on CAOs and administrations to lead the council in terms of like what affection the actions are to build a relationship. But all too often, councils and CAOs will just let it evolve without any constructive or systematic ways of building up the relationship. And then they wonder why in a year the relationship isn't working. And so here's a few official actions, in my opinion, that I've seen over the years that really work in terms of helping build a relationship over time. Okay. Again, the number one thing, annual performance appraisal. And this annual performance appraisal doesn't begin a year after council starts. It begins on day one. And what I mean by that is that you should have, in some way, shape, or form, a workshop. I do these. There's lots of good souls that do them. Basically, a workshop with the council and a CAO to set initial expectations. First thing is a strategic planning session. The second thing after council gets elected is then the annual performance appraisal process. And why? Is because in the performance appraisal, what you're doing at the beginning is you're setting up the expectations for behaviors. And so this is basically here's our strategic plan. What are the goals that we expect you to achieve? How is it we expect you to achieve them? What are the behaviors we expect from you in terms of like communication, responsibility, following direction? What is the process for basically measurement? How are we going to be able to correct you? And how is it going to be agreed upon? The performance appraisal really sets up the leadership model between council and the CAO and sets you up for success. So you must have our performance appraisal process, but it has to be very, very verbose and sophisticated. Not just simply, here's what we think you did wrong, and here's what we need to improve, and here's the piece of paper. Go away with that. It has to be something that is breathing, living, and part of basically everyday work. And so again, should be tied to strategic outcomes. What tools are we going to use for communication? How are we going to correct you? Whatever it might be. Definitely, the performance appraisal is one of the tools that must be used in a very proactive way for the relationship. The second thing, council CAO relationship workshops. I talked about this. I've done a few of these with councils. I've seen them done by many CAOs, and I'll just mention this. Some people will think this is offside, but I can remember when I worked at Strathcona County, I'd walk down the stairs, there was these offices, and in some offices, there's kind of these glass walls. And I always remember seeing Bill, the CAO of South Dakota County, sitting with council. And it was about once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. I would see him in there with council. I've learned later, not an official meeting, no decisions being made, just simply a relationship workshop. And what Bill apparently was asking in those meetings was, how's things going? Um, is there any, non agenda item issues? Like, is there anything that you have issues with? Is there anything you have issues with each other? Is there any issues that you have with me? What kinds of things do we need to be working on? And that unofficial meeting would be, sometimes I could see it would be an hour, sometimes it'd be all day. And having that relationship workshop, in an informal way, because he was very versed in how to do that, I think made a real difference. The alternative is to actually having a retreat, maybe it'd be a half a day or maybe a day where council and the CAO gets together, and it's just basically an unfiltered, unvarnished discussion about what's going right and what's going wrong. And again, sometimes these workshops can tie to, again, reestablishment of roles and responsibilities if there's crossover. What are the expectations of the CAO and the staff through the CAO? What are communication protocols? Or some counselors maybe walking into my office all the time, and I want all the council to know this. I want the counselor to talk to me about it. Why do you feel the need to do that? Government style alignment. I mean, again, how are we making decisions? How are we making sure that we're providing you the information you need to make decisions? How are we overcoming conflict? Whatever it might be, the key thing is the ability to get together and have a responsible and mature conversation. Once in a while. Do not wait, and this is where CAO and council relationships go really wrong, is when we just let things fester. We let things build up over time. We let negativity occur, build up, build up, build up. And then all of a sudden, the council is split, or they're very angry, or they want to get rid of the CAO. And a lot of these situations are extremely avoidable, just basically if we work together to talk and have and develop the relationship. And so official workshops, one of the tools you can put in your toolbox. Another one, 360-degree feedback tools. And so again, I walk around the lake. I want to hear, as your administrator, as your CAO, I want to know, what am I doing right? But also, what am I doing wrong? I mean, I think the what I'm doing wrong is probably almost equally important, maybe even more important than what I'm doing right. And so I want to hear about, how am I doing? Which means I want to hear it from the counselors. I want to hear it from council, but it's got to be structured in a way where it's not just simply opportunities to criticize. The worst thing, as I mentioned before, is what I call the grammar police. An elected official who consistently, on every agenda, will work very hard to find grammar issues in an agenda because it makes them feel strong and important or whatever it might be because they found something. Again, it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, they're trying to help possibly, but it's the approach. And by doing it in an open session, it makes the administration feel very small and maybe even nervous before they're about to present some really important information. And so it's about the approach to how you bring that criticism. It's not that criticism is wrong, it's about how it was delivered is one of the keys. And so you want to think about that. Feedback tools are really important, but how the feedback tool occurs is equally important. So again, what are the strengths that I have? What are maybe some of the blind spots that I'm not aware of? Maybe there's something political that's occurring. Maybe my staff is acting in a way that council doesn't like, or maybe we're doing something or have an approach on a service that council doesn't like. I want to hear about it earlier than later. These kinds of things encourage growth. It helps build credibility. Here's the thing. Remember, as administrators, and a lot of councils don't believe me when I say this, but I do, this has been my experience, is that we as administrators typically look up to council, we respect council, we want you to be successful. And so when you treat us right, when you or take the time to give us constructive criticism in a respectful way, when you give us the truth about how you're feeling about something and it's intended in a way that actually it helps build me up, it helps me get better, it helps build your credibility up with me as a leader. I start to trust you more, I follow you, and there's something, he's a really good CAO in the Edmonton region, his name is Tom Golden, he's the CAO of Stony Plain. I can remember when I asked him, what is it that makes a CAO successful? Because he's been very successful and has a great relationship with council. He said to me, I would give council all the advice I can give them in terms of what I think is important and not important for them to make a decision. I will respect their decision, even if they don't go with what I recommended. And then ultimately, I'll walk through a wall for them. And what it really hit me when he said that is that makes council feel very strong in terms of the relationship with the CAO, but also he's willing to walk through a wall for them because they're so respectful of him and their approach as well. And so it really builds up credibility, builds up trust, and builds up a great organizational culture, which again I think is absolutely key to success. And so feedback is one of the tools you have to have in your toolbox. Find ways of doing it. And if you're not used to doing it, ask for help in terms of how to do it. Call somebody like me or call a consultant, or talk to your fellow counselors. How do I properly criticize constructively? How do I properly get my feedback out to the CAO and administration in a way that actually works? And maybe talk together as a council in terms of how you'll do that. It'll make a big difference in terms of the relationship. Criticism isn't bad. It's just how you approach it. Okay. Protocols for managing individual requests. And so here's a big you want to make sure that you have ways and approaches for individual requests. So if I'm a counselor and I want something, I have a right to ask for something. And this is where sometimes CAOs go really wrong. They really push back on a counselor requesting anything. I have to be asked by counsel on the whole. I can't be asked by a counselor to do something. That's right in its theory and in its practice, but the reality is counselors on occasion are going to want something that maybe isn't even on the radar of the other counselors, even though they may agree with it. And so there should be a way for counselors to ask for things, and this is basically the counselor request process. So there should be some type of a form, there needs to be some type of a process, it has to be official, all the council has to be involved, and this will allow basically counselors to, write something. It can't be complicated, it's got to be easy, doesn't need to be overly onerous or long, but simply, I'm a counselor, I see something I don't like, I'm going to write down what I think should be different, and I'm going to submit that to the CAO. And that form is available to all of council. That allows the CAO to screen, prioritize, and coordinate the information. It allows the CAO to respond to the request by saying, yeah, actually, you're right. Maybe we could cut the grass better in this area, or maybe, we did miss the ball on clearing the snow properly on that street, or, maybe there is something wrong with the way that we're approaching our customer service in the rec facility or whatever it might be, and we will react. Or there's a reason why we are doing things the way that we're doing, and it allows them to respond to the counselor and maybe say, well, no, this isn't maybe a doable request because of here's my reasons. And so it gives the CAO the opportunity to vet requests rather than it all coming in as noise, right? If you just allow somebody to make phone calls all day, it becomes noise, it becomes difficult, it's not structured, and some counselors may take offense when you start acting on the direction of one counselor and not counsel on the whole. And so make your process basically structured and make it official and make sure it's inclusive of all of council. This will really help bridge the divide between governance and administration. It'll help bridge those issues that maybe counselors have with the way they deliver service. It'll promote fairness and transparency. If I have to write something down, all of council can see it. My requests are transparent. That really helps build trust between council and administration. Again, it helps staff workload in that we're not just jumping and reacting to everything that council wants. It gives the CAO opportunity to look at all of the requests and say to council, yeah, we can take care of that, no problem. Or there's a lot of requests coming in and we only have so many hours in a day, or I only have so much financial resources or human resources. We can't get to this now. It might take later, or I need additional resources. It allows the CAO to respond. And so again, having an official process can really help overcome a lot of misunderstandings, and in some cases, even anger and disagreements. And so really consider having an official request process. It'll make a big difference. Okay. Another one, again, great orientations and onboarding for new councils. And this means having a good orientation. I'm doing a number of them in Alberta here in October, November. I'm looking forward to those. You want to make sure council's well oriented and that the information that they're given is easily digestible and something that they're willing to go over again and again, right? And as I mentioned before, I put a lot of effort into making my slides interesting. I put a lot of effort into making my slides comprehensive so that they are actually a bit of a standalone ebook. And hopefully when you have orientations, the information you receive is like that. Because again, you want to have something, you want to give the counselor something that's good to orientate them in relationship to the way things should be from a council-CAO relationship perspective, but you want them to also have something that they can look at again and again and again if they need to revisit this information. Because again, constant learning is really what makes us successful. And so a good orientation will talk about core governance principles. What does democracy look like? what's the roles of administration versus council, what's the legislative role, how does basically the municipal framework work in terms of the province versus the municipality, that kind of thing. You want to make sure that they understand basically the legislative frameworks and core governance principles. Overview of municipal operations. This is where I think we go wrong sometimes as a CAO. We interpret well, you're strategic and we're operational, as we're not going to allow you to come into our world. And when I worked at Strathcona County, and then actually as the interim CAO at the town of Redwater, um, both times orientations were done. And Strathcona County, I can still remember seeing Bill and the CFO and the operations GM and whatever driving around the town in golf carts. Basically, and what they're doing is they're showing them things like, this is the sidewalks, here's the roads, here's our fire hall, here's our rec facilities, this is why we do things that we do. In Redwater, they did the same thing. They did basically a service level tour with the new council when they came online. And that allowed them to understand the reason we deliver services and how we deliver services. And so making sure that councils have a really good understanding of municipal operations, how complicated it is, and why we deliver services the way we do is, in my opinion, really key to keeping them out of the weeds and walking them into the right level of understanding of service levels and strategy and those types of things. And so don't push them away from that. Welcome them in and make sure that they understand here's the role and here's how we have to react to things. A big thing about operations too, I'll just leave you with this, is where I think CEOs go really wrong is when they really push back on any criticism of services from council. Sometimes I have found over time, councilors are right. Maybe we could have cleared this no better. Maybe there's a better way of cutting the grass. Wherever it might be, sometimes we have to listen. So really key to supporting the relationship is allow them in, but make sure you understand that boundary and where there should be flexibility and non-flexibility. Okay, the role of the CAO is really key. So knowing what you do and your job description and your performance appraisal and what your expectations are absolutely key to success. And then obviously the code of ethics, which is a big deal in faith world. This is a topic of great debate in today's municipal world, whether municipalities should be involved, whether investigators should be involved, whether the province should be involved. But having a strong understanding of code of ethics and constantly looking at this as a council is absolutely key. The best councils I've seen that have really done well and achieved amazing things, self-police, which means that the mayor and council on the whole will take care of issues internally and overcome many issues that are coming up because they have a great organizational culture within the council itself. Doesn't always work, but the ones that I've seen work really well usually have a very strong mayor and a very strong council on the whole that will overcome maybe that dysfunctional voice and help that dysfunctional voice overcome the challenges they have in relationship to being a good partner and a good council member. And so code of ethics, absolutely key to the success of a municipality, in my opinion. Communication protocols, I've already talked about that. The list goes on and on, but the key thing here is having good training, a good orientation, and making sure that councils know their role, administration knows their role, and then basically protocols and all that other fun kind of stuff. Okay. Again, use of an external facilitation. Now, I think this is a tool that sometimes is underutilized, but again, look for opportunities to find good facilitators. Not all are good, but you want to make sure that you find one to go to. You want to find one that maybe you can build a relationship up with, and then use them to help support things like your CAO performance appraisal, your relationship workshops, disagreements and conflict, your strategic planning sessions, whatever it might be. Build up a relationship with somebody and then use them to help support the relationship. And one of the key things you want to think about when you're thinking about facilitation is you want to think about what are the key things that we're here for as council. One thing, we're here to lead, so we're here to develop strategy, develop vision, and then ultimately lead, which we have to interpret as supporting our administration. So you want to have a facilitator that can show you how to do that. And that means having, again, neutral understanding how to deal with neutral ground. How do we handle democracy in a positive way? How do we handle conflict in a constructive way? How do we strategic plan in a way that actually results in action and rubber hitting the road, not just creating bookshelf items or shiny documents? How do we do the performance review of our CAO and maintain respect? And how do we communicate with our CAO during the year when we see things going wrong? How do we get that fresh perspective, from the facilitator that allows us to grow as a council. I think this is really important. So really look for external opportunities with individuals that can help you, and then develop your list of things that you think are important as a council in relationship to success, and then take action. I think it's really important. Okay. I'm taking a breath. I know I talked fast, and I just try to get through so much information in such a short time. I apologize for that, but at the same time, remember this as well. All of our webinars are recorded for 24/7 viewing. I'm going to make this one free on our website, so you can go back and look at this at any time. If there's things that you'd like to relook at, it'll be there. If there's things that you want to maybe share with others, the link will be there. You can share the link. It'll all be there hopefully by tomorrow. We have family staying with us, so my son's a little bit busy right now, but he was trying to help me this morning get things going, but he's a busy boy right now. But hopefully we'll have this webinar up within 24 hours, and you can share it or review it at any time. So anyway, moving on. Long-term successful relationships. So again, this is the long-term success. So we now understand roles. We understand the foundations of what a good sale administration relationship looks like. We understand maybe some key tools that we can utilize to actually support that relationship and make it grow and foster. Now we want to make sure that we can maintain it. And so to maintaining it is going to be things like, again, we're going to be intentional about the way that we lead. We're going to make sure that we take time to talk to our CEO. We're going to make sure that we take time for those occasional walks around the lakes. We're going to take time to provide 360 feedback. So I'm going to be intentional about my approach. Maybe we're going to have sometimes what we call coffee chats, one-on-ones. Now, again, we want to be careful with this. We want to make sure that those coffee chats are open to all elected officials, and they're structured and they're made transparent, but we want to make sure that we have some time for some informal discussions and some time for relationship building. I have worked with a lot of elected officials in my time, and sometimes I really appreciate those relationships. I appreciate when a counselor will take the time to come see me for a coffee and talk to me about maybe some of the challenges that they're having and ask for my advice, or talk to me about some challenges that they think that I'm having and talk to me about, maybe things that I could do differently to support my success. And so again, coffee chats are important. Strategic retreats, again, I've talked about this before. Make sure you schedule these. In my opinion, again, rule of thumb, there should be at least some kind of communication going on monthly between council and the CAO in a 360 manner. There should be at least once a quarter a relationship retreat, in my opinion. And the performance appraisal should be looked at maybe at the beginning of the year in terms of setting objectives, maybe a 6-month review just to take a look at how we're doing. And then, of course, at the end of the year, there has to be a full process in terms of the CAO performance appraisal, that kind of a thing, to make sure that we're doing things right. And so strategic retreats, relationship retreats, and that council CAO unvarnished relationship retreat is really important. Team building activities. I've been in municipalities where council and administration has gone golfing together, officially as a team building opportunity. Sometimes we've had facilitators come in with interesting games, or it might be from a relationship building perspective. Take the time to have opportunities to build up the team. Maybe it's going to a conference or a course together. Come to one of my courses, you'd enjoy it. So those kinds of things are important to think about. And then here's one that I think is absolutely key and critical to success. Celebrate your successes. Now, as a leader, I'm here to set vision. I'm here to set goals. I'm here to set expectations. I'm here also to motivate. And so when you're thinking about yourself as a counselor and then ultimately as counsel, you should have a conversation at some point together about what does it mean to motivate the team to get us where we want to be. Because ultimately, what we're not trying to achieve is political wins. We're trying to achieve wins for our community, which means we're making things better for people overall that live in our municipality. That means that we want to motivate our CAO, and we want to motivate the administration to become better, to be willing to change, to be willing to react to what we want from a disruptive perspective, to improve our community. Once we have those things, there's nothing more motivating to me than celebrating my milestones. When I was the budget guy, I would work my butt off every year as a budget guy. One, I love budget, and I really started to feel what I did as an employee was important. I helped enable departments get what they needed from a resource perspective to be able to achieve all these great services that we delivered. So I was very self-motivated. But one thing would happen every year that really got me going, and I'd be waiting for it, is the mayor normally, and it started with Bernard Hartwell, would always at the end of the budget process say, I want to thank Tim, and I want to thank his team, and he'd always know them by names. He would say, I want to thank Darlene, I'd like to thank Dawn, I'd like to thank Angela, whatever it might be. And he would say, I want to thank them for a great budget process. We really appreciate the process. You know, it was hard. We had some difficult decisions, difficult debates, but in the end, we want to thank the budget team for presenting this budget. And then each of the counselors would usually echo in and say something. I loved that. It meant a lot to me. It was celebrating a milestone, celebrating our process, but it was very motivating to me because, again, it made me feel that I was doing something good for our leaders, basically council. And so, again, as council, trust me, we like positive feedback. If you can find opportunities when your staff are doing good things, say it. Celebrating the milestones together goes a long way in positive relationship and building up the relationship. So celebrate those wins together. Again, public recognition of success, projects, grants. These moments reinforce the team. Remember, I was telling you about the AGM earlier, where Bill got up in front of all the staff and said, "I want to introduce you to the leaders of our community," which was council, and then talked about their strategic plan. Later in that AGM, we would actually go over the yearly achievements, and so he would find some things that departments had done. Maybe it's the building of a new road. Maybe it's the opening of a new grocery store. Maybe it was some of the however many people we had go through the rec facility that help them from a health and wellness perspective. He would have all of these examples of things that we did during the year and would celebrate our successes together as a team. I thought it was brilliant, and I really looked forward to it because I wanted to see what other departments had done and what they had achieved. And so look for opportunities to celebrate your success and do it together. Remember, council, yes, there's this divide that we have to have, but that doesn't mean that councils cannot get together with staff for team barbecues, team AGMs, team reviews of strategic achievements, whatever it might be. You should do those things at least once a year, in my opinion. Again, the staff need to know who the actual real leaders are in the organization. And if handled well by the CAO, these things can really bear fruit, in my opinion. So look for opportunities to celebrate together, okay? Again, maintaining means rebuilding after conflict or turnover because you're going to have conflict. And just like families, just like we are with our kids, I am with my son. You're going to have conflict on occasion, but the way that you approach the resolution of conflict is the key to success. And so you want to be intentional. So again, when we have conflict between council and administration, this is where I think a lot of municipalities go wrong, and when it evolves from conflict to dysfunction is when it's like, again, ongoing conflict. You want to make sure you have some go-to tools that allows you to overcome the conflict. So again, it may be clarifying the roles and expectations. Maybe the counselor's not happy and is constantly complaining. Go back and say, okay, I want to reset the expectations because I don't know what's expected to me as your CAO. Am I doing something wrong? Does the rest of council believe this? If so, then I need to change my behaviors. If not, then the counselor needs to recognize he has to back off maybe of his expectations slightly according to council on the whole. So again, clarifying the roles and expectations can be important. Acknowledging past tensions. We have had issues before. Recognizing why do we have issues. Could be polarizing issues. Could be personality conflicts. Could be maybe a CAO is maybe picking favorites a bit too much. Wherever it might be, you want to recognize that you've had past tensions and look at constructive ways to overcome them. So again, rebuilding is really important. Make sure you create space for dialogue. As I mentioned before, relationship workshops is really key. Providing unvarnished opportunity for dialogue. But again, in my opinion, in a controlled way that doesn't allow for conversations to become to digress to where it's maybe yelling or anger I've seen and heard of issues where counselors have thrown things across the room in council chambers, swore at fellow counselors. We don't want to digress into that. And so we want to make sure we can create space for honest dialogue. To me, this is where the relationship workshops really work out, where a council or in a private setting, in a safe setting, can really vent about how they feel in a varnished way, but in a constructive way. I think that's really key to success. So make sure you can create space for these types of things. Reaffirm the commitment to collaboration. Maybe we don't agree. Maybe the CAO and administration aren't doing things that are completely in alignment with the way council wants, but we're all committed to this same thing. We as the CAO are committed to making sure that you're successful. We're your trusted advisor. We're committed to your strategic goals. Maybe we're slipping because, again, we're just too busy. Municipalities are complex. We've got more snow than we thought we'd have this year. We have a drought this year. We've got infrastructure failure that's not allowing us to get to maybe some of the strategic projects, wherever it might be. We want to make sure that we recognize why there's gaps, but reaffirm our commitment to each other. Again, communication, and a commitment to the relationship building, to me, is absolutely key to success. Okay, foster that culture of professionalism. Again, um, um, you know, be kind, be respectful, be professional, and recognize there's times for criticism in open public, but there's also times that it's better held behind closed doors. And so again, earning the public trust means good governance, good respect, and having a good relationship. Again, the CAO should never be undermining council, and council should never be undermining the CAO. And as long as we recognize that, that means that we are going to be professional in our approach. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have hard conversations. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have disagreements or frustrations. It just means that we're going to take a professional approach to overcoming those challenges. And if you do that, you'll be successful in the long term and certainly in the short term. Almost done, getting close. So if I go a minute or two over, I apologize, but I think I'm almost done here. So almost there. Make communication standard. So again, relationship building comes down to great communication. And so be proactive about this. Make sure you have basically kind of, here is our approach to great communication. Here is our belief in terms of how we should be approaching communication. We have scheduled briefings, written reports, open forums and check-ins. We have relationship workshops. And so we know that maybe once every quarter, we're going to have that opportunity to kind of vent. We have opportunities to have requests. We have opportunities for one-on-one coffee chats. I mean, all those things are coming, so I don't have to wait, and I'm not going to act in a dysfunctional way by getting on Facebook and firing out kind of how I feel about things as like that picture, because I know I'm going to have an opportunity to voice my concerns. And so think about how are we going to basically construct our positive communication. If you can basically have a structured approach to communication and make sure that there's an opportunity for unvarnished and difficult conversations, it will prevent misunderstandings and certainly prevent what we call significant dysfunction in our municipal government challenges in today's world from that relationship perspective. And here's the thing: bad relationships and battles between administration and councils help nobody. It just makes our communities look bad. And so making sure that we're constructive but proactive in the approach to being able to have hard conversations, to me, is absolutely critical to the success of the relationship. And again, almost there, you want to make sure that you commit to relationship maintenance. And so again, this means that I am going to consistently recognize I need to always have an ongoing effort. You know what? Things may get bad, but I'm going to re-pick myself up, and I'm going to commit to communicating, commit to meeting with each other, commit to positive conflict resolution. I'm going to commit to making sure that we find ways to overcome our challenges together. And so commitment to the relationship is key to success. If you're not willing to commit and not willing to maybe admit where you're wrong or admit that a relationship can't work, then the council administration relationship, the chances of success go down significantly. So again, commitment is one of the keys. So again, commitment, final reflection. Here we go. The one thing. So if you're going to take one thing from this webinar, consider one action. What am I going to do differently with my CAO or with my council that's going to make a difference from a positive perspective? I'm going to schedule maybe one-on-one chats with them, a coffee chat. I'm going to create a council request form. I'm going to book a council relationship retreat. I'm going to do a performance appraisal for the CAO. I'm going to do something from this webinar that's going to result in a better relationship between council and administration. It doesn't have to be rocket science. I know I've gone over a lot of things today, but the key thing is pick one thing from today's webinar and implement it maybe in the next week or 2 weeks. Then pick another thing from the webinar and implement it over the next week or 2 weeks. And if you do that for, say, maybe 6 months, you will see an incredible change in the relationship between you and your CAO or you and your council. Commit to the relationship and be willing to take action. That is, to me, the key to success. And so with that, I'm going to take a breath and stop and ask if anybody has any questions for today. I know it was a lot of information. Feel free to use the chat function if you have any comments or any thoughts on today's material. I hope that you like it. And know that I'm always available for conversations after the fact. If you want, you can contact me. I think I've got my information here. There's the vice president of health and wellness for our organization. Her name's Bloomer, by the way. She's the vice president. I locked her up today so she wouldn't come in. But connect with me on LinkedIn and or use my email. I'm always open to conversations and providing support if you have any questions or any thoughts about today's material. I'm not seeing any questions or any chat comments coming up, so I'll just go on for maybe 2 more minutes and then I'll sign off. Just again, just in case you're interested, I'm delivering courses in Vancouver, in Edmonton, in Saskatoon, and Niagara Falls this year. And if you go online, they're going to be delivered in September, October. I hope to see some of you there. And I'm in the initial stages for planning courses in St. John's, Newfoundland, Jasper, and Banff, Alberta for the spring. And so hopefully you'll see you at some courses. I'd love to see you here, fully CPA creditable. And people that come to my courses say that they're a lot of fun because I'm a kind of a big group. So I got lots of interesting stories, and hopefully you can come to our courses. If you want to be a course host and would like us to come to your community, just reach out. I'm more than willing to come and present my courses in person for municipality as well. And so with that, I'm not seeing any questions or comments or any chat. So going once, going twice, going 3 times. These are some of the courses I've delivered. I just want to say thank you. Hopefully you enjoyed today's webinar. Hopefully you got great value out of today's material. And please share it with your colleagues. This is a subject that I think is very important. If you have any questions or anything else, you want to get a hold of me, you know where I am. So with that, everybody, have a fantastic day. And again, I'll see you soon. Tomorrow we have a webinar on team building. So looking forward to seeing all our all access pass holders tomorrow. So with that, I'll just say goodbye. Thanks for now.